If it's Thursday, former President Trump ramps up the trash talk, hopping aboard a garbage truck, highlighting President Biden's garbage comments as he heads out west with just 5 days to go. Plus, Vice President Harris out west as well, hitting Nevada and Arizona and blasting the former president on the issue of reproductive rights after he vowed to protect women, quote, whether the women like it or not. And could another battle be brewing over Obamacare? Both campaigns react to House Speaker Mike Johnson's recent comments on the trail about overhauling America's healthcare system if Trump wins the White House. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Ali Vitale in Washington. With just 5 days until Election Day, Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump are making their final westward swings with multiple stops in 2 key battlegrounds. The vice president hitting the ground in Phoenix, Reno, and Las Vegas before turning her attention to other key swing states this weekend, with a final day of campaigning set for Monday in all-important Pennsylvania. Mr. Trump, meanwhile, is curiously mixing in stops in non-battleground states in these final days, including New Mexico today and Virginia this weekend. It comes as the former president continues to seize on President Biden's recent gaffe, appearing to call Trump supporters garbage. The president clarified his remarks and says they're being taken out of context. Harris essentially disavowed them. Still, Donald Trump is going all in, complete with a joyride in a garbage truck ahead of his Wisconsin rally last night.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden. Kamala and Joe call all of us, and them, even them, garbage. I call you the heart and soul of America. When he called us all garbage, how stupid, what a stupid word. That blows deplorable away, don't you think?
The Harris campaign, meanwhile, largely ignoring those jabs, instead pouncing on these comments Mr. Trump made at that same Green Bay rally, calling himself a protector of women.
I want to protect the women of our country, they said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in. I'm going to protect them from foreign countries that want to hit us with missiles and lots of other things.
The vice president slamming those remarks today, tying them to one of her strongest issues, reproductive rights.
It actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right and their ability to make decisions about their own lives, including their own bodies. And this is just the latest on a series of reveals by the former president of how he thinks about women and their agency. He is not going to be fighting for women's reproductive rights. He does not prioritize the freedom of women and the intelligence of women to make decisions about their own lives and bodies.
The Trump campaign has largely focused on turning out men this November, where our latest NBC News poll shows he enjoys a 16-point advantage. The former president has also tried to downplay the political potency of the abortion issue, even going so far as to argue that women, in his words, will no longer be thinking about abortion if he wins. But that also comes as some in his own party warn that his rhetoric could backfire with certain women voters.
I mean, this bromance and this masculinity stuff, I mean, it borders on edgy to the point that it's going to make women uncomfortable.
Joining us now is our NBC News team, who are both in Phoenix, Arizona. Mike Memoli is covering all things Harris campaign, and Vaughn Hillyard has the view from Trump world. Mike and Vaughn, I hope you guys can go out for a nice drink later tonight. But first, Mike, to you. Harris held a gaggle with reporters to address those protector of women comments from the former president, and today is releasing a new ad on abortion. So how heavily can we expect the campaign to lean into this in the closing days?
Well, and of course, Ali, I wish you could join us for that drink. But listen, it's amazing that we're already at the point so close to Election Day where we're talking about the final visits these candidates are making to these battleground states today. We're going to see the vice president here on stage within the next hour, her last event in Arizona. And listen, you know this as well as anybody, that Democrats had been counting on reproductive rights being a major motivating force for a powerful electorate, which is women voters. We saw the way it powered Democrats to a surprising set of victories in the midterm elections in 2022. Harris campaign advisors had been pointing to 2022 as the more relevant comparison when trying to judge these early voting and turnout numbers than 2020 to indicate that. And as we've had a debate for much of this week about who's insulting what group of voters and whether they intended to or not, this is a moment that the Harris campaign is seizing on, not just because it really calcifies what they think has been a powerful issue for them, but it has particular potency in several of these battleground states. Michigan, where we saw that so motivating in 2022, still here to this day in 2024. But Arizona, where it is on the ballot, literally a constitutional referendum to enshrine abortion rights. And so we saw the vice president already address this before she flew to Arizona. Our colleague Yamiche Alcindor will be speaking with the vice president potentially in the next hour as well. We'll bring you those remarks, that interview, when it happens live. And I have a feeling that that's going to be another part of her closing message, which we've been seeing on the trail all week.
Yeah, you got to imagine, Mike. And the thing I think about with Michigan and Arizona is, yes, the abortion piece that they were able to put in their state constitutions, but also the fact that both of those are states with proof positive of electing women in executive roles. It makes me wonder how this focus on abortion jives with the vice president's broader closing message. Does the message that voters are hearing depend on whether you're hearing from the candidate directly, or perhaps the onslaught of ads that swing state voters are getting? God bless them.
Well, the musical performance is about to begin here, Ali, so I apologize if it's getting even louder behind me. But, you know, we have seen, as I've gone state by state, the kinds of TV ads that are being aired in each individual market. And we tend to focus on the issue of the day nationally, but it is remarkable to see what is being tailored to the particular electorates of each state. But the overarching theme for Vice President Harris in these closing days has been unity and, frankly, playing into what they think is also a powerful argument, exhaustion with Donald Trump. Vice President Harris was just greeted on the tarmac a few moments ago by several of the Republicans who have endorsed her candidacy, former Republicans, we should say. John Giles, the former mayor of Mesa, Arizona, as well as Jeff Flake, the former U.S. senator as well. So this all fits into the larger narrative. They think that she will, whether you agree with her or not, try to bridge to across the aisle to bring this country together, whereas Donald Trump is simply trying to divide and continue to stoke division in this country.
Yeah, that's so central to the message here, Mike. And in the last few seconds I have with you, can you talk through the travel plans that she's going to be making and the stops she'll be making through Election Day? Specifically, I'm interested in Pennsylvania. Might there be a blank space, for lack of a better word, for one key campaigner that was a big endorsement but we haven't seen on the campaign trail?
I think I know who you're talking about.
I mean, I have to.
But as we look at the vice president's schedule here in the closing days, it really does tell you about how they view their paths to victory. Here is the final trip out west today, making also multiple stops in Nevada. She's going to be back in Wisconsin, back in Michigan. Also, that Sun Belt strategy on display, as we see on Saturday, Atlanta, Georgia, Charlotte, North Carolina. We are all waiting to see if we see Taylor Swift. We've already had Bruce Springsteen. We have Los Tigres del Norte behind me now. We had Mumford & Son, Maggie Rogers. There is no bigger star attraction, though, that would really light a fire heading into Election Day than Taylor Swift. And I'm sorry to say I got nothing for you. And I wish I could tell you I also had some lyrics to play to drop on you as well. But, you know, not really my jam.
You know I'm going to be hounding you over text until we get an answer about this. Vaughn, I want to pivot to you in battleground Arizona as we wait for that interview that Mike helped to tease us on, which is Yamiche Alcindor likely speaking with the vice president in the next few minutes. We'll, of course, bring that to folks as soon as we see it happening. But, Vaughn, you're also in battleground Arizona. Trump's first event today, though, was in blue New Mexico, and he'll campaign in more purple Virginia this weekend. We've seen him, though, in both California and New York this month. Is this confidence or is it something else? Explain this strategy.
Right, and if I may first real fast, Allie, Taylor Swift started her Eras tour right next door to where we are here.
Did.
And Donald Trump, we should note, is now ending his 2024 tour here in Arizona today. This is his last visit out west. He's going to be holding a rally in Nevada, in the suburbs of Las Vegas, too. That's his last Nevada stop. So this is the end of his Sun Belt Western campaign tour. But you noted that there is a third place he is stopping, and that's right now in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which we should know Donald Trump lost by 11 percentage points in 2020. Yet he is making the case that he is building such a big coalition this time around that he's going to be able to win states like Virginia and New Mexico. And I think it's important to note, though, also some of the first words out of his statement to this Albuquerque crowd here a few moments ago was that their elections are rigged and that he's going to win. We've already seen over the course of the last days and weeks Donald Trump lay the foundation to claim if he loses on Tuesday night that the election was taken from him. Of course, there's no evidence of fraud here at this time.
I remember, too, in 2016, doing a stop in New Mexico, of course, seeing him stop in other blue states. So he's obviously trying to push through that same path now. But the other thing, Vaughn, that we've heard him say variations of is these protector of women comments. I mean, he's been saying some version of this "I cherish" or "I'll protect women" line for years, while also adding most recently, "My advisors don't want me to say it." So does the campaign think that this is at all the right strategy?
Let's be very clear. For Donald Trump, he is trying to reach women voters to the extent that Donald Trump can. And through his own messaging, he has been vocal that he said that the reason why Republican gubernatorial and Senate candidates lost in 2022 midterms was because they struggled to message to women, particularly on reproductive rights. And that's where he said that it's incumbent upon the Republicans running in 2024, including himself, to make clear to voters, women voters especially around the country, that they have a more moderate stance on abortion and that they do not want to have strict abortion measures around the country. But for Donald Trump, the difficult reality is that, like here in Arizona, there is that referendum on the ballot that would codify abortion protection rights. But also it goes down to the Senate level, right? Kari Lake is the Senate candidate here. And in 2022, when she was running for governor, she said that she would defend what was called the territorial ban, which would even punish doctors who perform abortions. Yeah. And so there is, for Donald Trump, he is running around a Republican Party that is frankly made sure through the overturning of Roe v. Wade that it is not viewed necessarily in a positive light by a great many women in the electorate around the country.
And we're going to talk about the X factor that is abortion in just a few minutes. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, Vaughn, is Trump clearly wants to make hay of Biden's garbage comment. But beyond firing up the base, is that actually something that's going to move voters at this point? Or is the Trump campaign in the waning days just in full-on red meat mode?
Right. It may not move, right, your independent or the reticent conservatives in places like Maricopa County, but it is potentially going to galvanize that cadre of MAGA faithful support. For Donald Trump, so much of this is about turnout and ensuring that those people that consider themselves Donald Trump supporters, in fact, are Donald Trump voters by Tuesday, and particularly in the rural parts of the state, like here in Arizona, being able to juice that turnout, which they did in 2020. And they were almost able to make up deficits in the suburbs and places like Maricopa County. That is where some of that red meat, that is going to turn out. And Donald Trump wants to have all of those Trump supporters hear the comments about garbage in order to make sure that they get out and they're angry and vote here over the next 5 days.
Vaughn, my friend, thank you. Keep up the amazing work. Before that, Mike Memoli. Please, Vaughn, go buy Mem a margarita to say thank you. And joining me now with a look at how Election Day could play out is Chief Political Analyst Todd. Chuck, if there's one thing we do know about this race is that it's going to be close. But what are the most likely scenarios for how this actually breaks down?
Well, look, I want to also sort of do it the way I'm watching election night. Look, here's our map for you so you can watch along with us here. And this is kind of fun. You can keep track. So here's the basic map as it's set up with the 7 battleground states, not given to either end. So basically, Harris is starting with a baseline of 226, Trump with 219. As you can see, of these 7 remaining states, Harris has 20 paths to 270. Trump has 21 paths. And yes, there are 3 paths that could get you to 269, 269. But I start out looking at this as a 2-state race right now. Pennsylvania, North Carolina. And if the 2 of them split it, we're in for a long week, maybe a long month. If one candidate wins both, I think suddenly we have a president-elect by dinner time on Wednesday. So let me show you. So let's do it this way. Let's assume Harris sweeps them both. Watch what happens. She just wins Pennsylvania, North Carolina. She just needs 9 more electoral votes. Well, the assumption is if you win Pennsylvania, you're probably going to get Michigan and Wisconsin, but she only needs 1 of them, right? So if she somehow sweeps both Pennsylvania and North Carolina, something we will know by sunrise Wednesday morning, Allie, then it won't matter what happens out west. Just Wisconsin would give her the 271 or a Michigan, right? So you see how suddenly she puts that away. Now let's do it in the reverse. Let's have Trump win them both and see what happens here. It brings him to 254. Well, if he wins that, you got to assume he's going to get Georgia as well. And guess what? It's over. He can lose Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, and he'd still be at 270 electoral votes. The point is, that just, to me, shows you how important the two of them are together. Now, let's assume a split decision. And you see here, this is the Southern. Does she do better? I believe if she is doing better with older white women because of the abortion issue, it should help her in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin, and she can get to 270 and lose the entire Sun Belt. And let's put it all in red here so you can see what this would do. And as you can see, it's astonishing. Really only one state in the South would she carry. Yes, Virginia. Some of us argue that it's already seceded from the Confederacy. But basically, she'd do this with just winning New Mexico. She wouldn't have to win anything in the Southeast. None of these western states, and she can get there. Now, let's do it the other way, because it's the other way, frankly, that I think creates the nightmare. So if they split it this way, as you can see, Harris is short. Let me get us back to a blank space here a minute. All right, so I can show you how I think this ends up becoming a nightmare scenario. I still think Georgia ends up in Trump's column. But if they split it this way, where she wins North Carolina and he wins Pennsylvania, let's go ahead and assume she does win Wisconsin there. And let's go ahead and assume she does win Michigan. She needs to find another state to do that. Is it Nevada? Is it Arizona? It won't matter, but here's what I can promise you. If this is the scenario where he wins Pennsylvania, she wins North Carolina, is able to hang on to the other two blue wall states, which polling has indicated she's slightly stronger in those two than she is in Pennsylvania. All the lawyers, all of Washington, you, me, America, we're going to be either in Phoenix or Las Vegas arguing over every single ballot because the presidency is going to be on the line depending on the outcome of those states. So this is why at the end of the day, it all starts with what happens in Pennsylvania, North Carolina. We will know those first before we know everything else. And as you can say, it takes us on some interesting paths that could create not just a long night, not just a long week, but potentially a protracted legal fight all month, particularly if we're all just trying to figure out the ballots in Nevada. My nightmare scenario is Las Vegas for the month of November.
So we now know what keeps Chuck Todd up at night. I have to say my heart kind of dropped into my stomach at that point when you're talking about how long this process could be, but we all are priming viewers, voters, everyone to know that it could be a lengthy process. Chuck, the last thing I want to get you on in a little bit of time left is you have in your latest column about abortion as the wild card presidential issue.
Yeah.
You write in part that it's been fascinating to watch Trump overperform all of the Republican Senate candidates. And one explanation you offer is that he is performing better with abortion rights-focused Republicans than any other Republican on the ballot. That almost seems surprising to me, given the ways that he's held a million positions on this issue. I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Allie, you just said it. Given that he's held a million positions on these issues. You know who hasn't held a million position on this issue? David McCormick. You know who hasn't held a million positions? Mike Rogers. You see where I'm going. It's the old videotape. This is what strategists on both sides have told me. There's the reason these Democratic Senate candidates have been just having more success. They've been pounding their Republican opponents for things they've said before Roe was overturned about Roe v. Wade. That need to get rid of it or celebrating it. The old videotape of Donald Trump is what? Well, in some cases, he sounds like a pro-choice Democrat, right? And he has gone out of his way to say he doesn't like the 6-week bans. So his ability to muddy his message has been very helpful to him. But it leads you to the real possibility he could carry a lot of these states and not bring a single Senate candidate with him because of the abortion issue. There clearly is a handful of voters who are voting Trump and Democrat as a protection on the abortion issue, which I know maybe a lot of people didn't have in their bingo card. But when you start to think about the old video on all these candidates, I think voters do think Trump's not that serious versus the other Republicans running for congressional offices that they are more serious about abortion bans or limiting access.
After the fact that he put justices on the court that ultimately were the ones that overturned Roe.
Voters are voters, Allie,
yes.
right? Everybody consumes this information differently.
Absolutely. Chuck Todd, thank you as always.
You got it.
And coming up, I'll talk to a top official with the Trump campaign about the former president's closing message with just 5 days to go. Plus, NBC News is on the ground in Milwaukee as canvassers look to get out the vote in battleground Wisconsin's largest city. That's straight ahead. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. Earlier this week, we brought you a member of the Harris campaign to talk about their take on the closing days of this campaign. Now let's hear from someone on the Trump campaign. Joining me now is Karoline Leavitt. She's the National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign. And Karoline, I want to start with Mr. Trump's comment last night. We spoke about it just a few minutes ago in our last segment, where he said he'd protect women, quote, whether the women like it or not, I'm going to protect them. Given the sexual misconduct allegations against him, the E. Jean Carroll case, can you see how that might make some women uncomfortable saying he's going to do something, whether they like it or not?
No, I can't, because if you look at the full context of President Trump's remarks, he brought this up in the context of illegal immigration and protecting women from the illegal immigrant criminals, which we know there are nearly 500,000 of them in this country right now, protecting them from rape, from robbery, from assault, and from murder, which unfortunately in Kamala Harris's America, we have lost far too many innocent women at the hands of illegal people who should have never been here in the first place. So that was what President Trump was saying. As a woman myself, I am not offended by those comments. In fact, I want a president who is going to protect me and my family. And I know so many other women feel the same. And that's why tens of millions of women across this country are going to be casting their ballots for President Trump.
I want to stay on this topic of how the Trump campaign is messaging to women, because I'm going to play something that we heard this week from Trump's former primary rival, Nikki Haley, who I spent a bunch of time with on the road. Listen to what she said.
This is not a time for them to get overly masculine with this bromance thing that they've got going. 53% of the electorate are women. Women will vote. They care about how they're being talked to, and they care about the issues. They need to remember that. This is a time of discipline, and this is a time of addition.
Haley has made these kinds of cautionary comments about this before. What's your reaction now, 5 days out from Election Day?
Well, I would agree that we are staying disciplined and we are targeting and focusing on messaging to women every single day on the campaign trail. The top issues for women in this country right now are inflation, our economy, and immigration. And those are the issues that President Trump is talking about every single day on the campaign trail. Women want more money in our pockets. We want to be able to provide for our family. We want our children to be able to afford the American dream. That's what President Trump is promising. We don't want violent criminals lurking in our neighborhoods. We want those illegal immigrant criminals deported from our country. That's what President Trump is promising as well. We want a president who's going to stand with our local law enforcement in our communities, not to fund them like Kamala Harris. And I would just add, when it comes to targeting women and messaging to them, Kamala Harris's top surrogate, Mark Cuban, just this morning said that President Trump does not surround himself with intelligent and strong women, essentially saying any woman, including myself, who surrounds himself with President Trump is dumb and weak. I think those comments are insulting, and I think it's going to drive even more women to the polls for Donald Trump in the next 5 days.
And of course, Karoline, you know this, but Mark Cuban isn't on the ticket. What I was asking about in the past is the ways that Trump has talked about women, and of course, the way that Nikki Haley is saying now that there just needs to be more discipline around this. I wonder if you guys think it wouldn't have been beneficial to be able to get her out on the campaign trail, and where was the scheduling disconnect on that?
Well, Nikki Haley has been campaigning for President Trump. She had a primetime speaking slot. She had a primetime speaking slot at the RNC. She's been sending out fundraising emails and robocalls. And if you roll the tape of her comments in that interview earlier, she said why she, as a woman, is supporting President Trump. And it's because President Trump has solutions to the problems that women are facing in this country, and Kamala Harris does not. So Nikki Haley has endorsed President Trump. That is what women across the country know. And we're very excited and proud to have that endorsement on this team.
But would it be helpful to get her out on the campaign trail side by side with him, show that unity from the primary, and also maybe get a few skeptical Trump voters who were Haley voters back in the fold?
Well, we are having great people join President Trump on the campaign trail every single day, including everyday Americans and women who have lost their children at the hands of migrant criminals, everyday Americans and women who are struggling to afford groceries and gas and want President Trump to make this country affordable again. Their testimony is just as powerful as any politician's, and we're proud to be joined by them on the campaign trail every day.
I want to revisit the Madison Square Garden rally. Since then, musical artist Nicky Jam has withdrawn his endorsement of Donald Trump, citing those comments from a comedian about Puerto Rico. But the Bulwark has reporting that the comedian in question had his remarks in part vetted by the campaign because he was prepared to call Harris at one point an offensive slur, but that was spiked by the campaign. So were these remarks reviewed?
The entirety of the remarks were not vetted by the campaign. The slur that we did absolutely condemn was a side conversation someone on the campaign had about those remarks. President Trump has condemned the remarks. Our campaign immediately condemned the joke. And again, this was a joke that was made by a comedian. I wish the media would focus more on the truths that were shared by many of the phenomenal speakers we had at Madison Square Garden. The room was packed with 20,000 great Americans of all races and religions, ages, men, women who came to hear from the list of speakers that we had and were incredibly enthused with the program that was put together. And most importantly, were impressed by Mrs. Trump's remarks that night and also President Trump, who was offering to restore the American dream and make America safe and strong and wealthy again.
Just button this up for us then. Did no one on the campaign read a prepared set of remarks that included that joke about Puerto Rico? It was just never seen by y'all.
That's correct.
Okay, we heard that, of course, our own team was at a comedy show where we had heard that line sort of rehearsed from the comedian, but you guys weren't aware of that, you're saying?
That's correct, yes.
Why not just apologize? The Archbishop of San Juan posted a letter basically saying that he wants the former president to say he's sorry. I know that it's a comedian who said it, but why not just have the former president come out and say, this isn't how I think, this isn't what I feel, I'm sorry. I've never really heard him say those words.
He has said that. He said he didn't know who this comedian was. He didn't like the joke at all, and he doesn't agree with it. He's done a lot for Puerto Rico when he was president of the United States, and our campaign came out immediately and said that this joke, of course, does not reflect President Trump's views or the views of the campaign. Again, this was a joke that was made by a comedian. I would like to hear the media ask the same questions of Kamala Harris's spokesperson if she is going to come out and strongly condemn Joe Biden for calling more than half of the country garbage.
She did.
I know she went to a microphone yesterday in an attempt to do that, but it was very poor. It was very weak. She essentially said Joe Biden cleaned up the remarks. There's no cleaning it up. It's on video for the whole world to see. He labeled more than half of the country who support President Trump as garbage, as trash. That's despicable rhetoric, and it's not the first time. You had Hillary Clinton in 2016 calling Trump supporters a basket of deplorables, and even worse, over the past 8 years, the Democrats have likened President Trump to one of the worst mass murderers in the world, Hitler, calling his supporters fascists and Nazis. That's despicable rhetoric that has led to political violence in this country, including 2 heinous assassination attempts on President Trump's life. I guess the joy at the Kamala campaign headquarters is gone, but there's a lot of it here, I will tell you that.
I just want to be clear. Vice President Harris did say she disavowed those remarks. President Biden says he was taken out of context. But if we're talking about name-calling supporters, on the campaign trail Monday, J.D. Vance called Harris and her supporters a pejorative word. So do you condemn that name-calling as well?
I'm not sure which remark you are referring to,
he
but what I will say...
somethings.
Well, what I will tell you is that President Trump has been slandered and lied about from the left.
But his own running mate, who is actually on the ballot, is saying this.
More than any politician in American history. They have likened him to Hitler. They have called him a threat to democracy, which one of the attempted assassins on President Trump's life echoed that same exact rhetoric on his social media accounts. There is political violence coming from one side, and it's coming from the left at Donald Trump and his supporters, and it's despicable. And President Trump is out there on the campaign trail every single day talking about the issues that matter. We have a joyful campaign. We have an optimistic vision for this country to make it great and affordable and wealthy and safe and strong again. And that's why President Trump today in 2024 is more popular than he's ever been since 2016, even despite these heinous and vitriolic rhetoric aimed at him for 8 years now.
I want to ask you, Karoline, because Steve Bannon was released from prison this week. He said that he spoke with Trump after being released from jail. He urged Trump to hold a press conference around 11 p.m. on election night. So is there a plan in place, as you guys are looking at what election night might look like, for Mr. Trump to speak early? And is there a plan for him to declare victory regardless?
I won't get ahead of our plans on election night. Right now, We're going to watch the results come in. We look forward to a safe and secure election. We're excited about the efforts that have been made on behalf of the RNC and the Trump campaign to secure the integrity of this election, to ensure that every ballot is legally cast and legally counted. And all of the trends in the data right now are pointing to a victory for President Trump on Tuesday night. We have him leading in every single battleground state. He's going on offense in historically blue states today. He's in New Mexico. He'll be going to the Commonwealth of Virginia this weekend. And when we look at the trends in early voting, Republicans are leading in many of the battleground states as well. So we're cautiously optimistic for a big victory, but we're not taking 1 second for granted. We're going to leave no stone unturned in reaching as many voters as possible between now and Election Day.
And of course, many of these polls are within the margin of error, and it shows a razor-thin race. Karoline, Leavitt, thank you for your time. I'm sure we will talk again. And my NBC News colleague Yamiche Alcindor just spoke to Vice President Harris moments before her Phoenix campaign rally. Here is that interview.
Excuse me. Again, thank you so much for speaking with me, Madam Vice President. What concerns you most when you think about how close this election is and these key swing states that you need to win?
It is my responsibility to be everywhere I can to talk directly with voters and talk with them about the issues that are at stake in this election so that I can earn their vote. And so that's why I'm here today in Arizona, why yesterday I was in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to be all over the country pretty much, especially in the swing states, talking with folks about the issues that relate to them and the contrast between me and Donald Trump.
Former First Lady Michelle Obama says she stays up at night wondering why this election is so close. Do you do that? What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night are the challenges that face the American family and my role and responsibility in my to-do list to address those issues, whether it be on bringing down the cost of groceries, bringing down the cost of housing, what we need to do to make sure child care is affordable for working families, what I will do to make sure that Medicare covers in-home care for seniors. Those are the things that keep me up, which is doing the work that will directly impact the people of America. And this, again, is a big contrast between me and Donald Trump. He spends full time talking about himself, his personal grievances, his enemies list. On day one, I will walk into the Oval Office with my to-do list, which is about helping the American people deal with their challenges and also tap into their ambitions and dreams.
Former President Donald Trump has said that he would be a protector of women, whether they like it or not. What do you make of that, and how does that contrast with your views on women and their rights and needs?
Well, I'll just speak on behalf of myself, but also the Americans that I speak with every day around our country, regardless of their gender, which is the majority of Americans believe that women are intelligent enough and should have and be respected for their agency to make decisions for themselves about what is in their best interest and not have their government, and certainly not Donald Trump, telling them what to do. And his latest comment is just the most recent in a series of examples that we have seen from him in his words and deeds about how he devalues the ability of women to have the choice and the freedom to make decisions about their own body.
Former President Trump also rode around in a garbage truck to call attention to President Biden's comments about his supporters and their rhetoric. Are you concerned that President Biden's comments might undermine your own messaging that you want to be a president for all Americans?
Well, I've addressed how I feel about those comments. One, that the president explained what he meant, but two, I do not believe, and I will speak for myself, that we should ever criticize people based on who they vote for. But let's understand again where we are in this election. On the one hand, you have Donald Trump, who refers to people by the most demeaning words, who attempts to really take from them the dignity that they so rightly deserve. He is someone who talks full time about the enemy within. He speaks ill of America. He refers to us as a garbage can. And he does not understand that most people are exhausted with his rhetoric, exhausted with that approach, exhausted with an approach that Donald Trump has that's trying to divide our country and have Americans point fingers at each other. They're done with it, and they're ready to turn the page and accept and receive a new generation of leadership, which I offer.
As he and his supporters grab onto that language, though, from President Biden, you're not at all concerned that that might undermine your messaging?
I am very clear that in this election, what the American people want most is to to know that I have a plan, that we have a plan to bring down the cost of living and invest in American families, invest in small businesses, invest in our economy. I am proud that I have the support of leading economists in our nation who recognize that I actually have a specific plan and that it will strengthen America's economy. He has very little of a plan besides giving tax breaks to the richest people, and his plan, whatever it may be, will actually weaken our economy.
I've talked to Americans from all across this country in all walks of life who are inspired by your story. What's your message to them as they are looking at your journey, especially the history that you are making and might make as the first Black woman and Indian woman to break down this glass ceiling? And even now, of course, making the history that you're making now.
Well, you know, you've probably heard me say many times, my mother said to me, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. And what I see in the people who are coming to rallies such as this are, you know, young men, young women, people of every age, every background, every race, who are excited about the possibility of a new generation of leadership and excited about the fact that they have a choice to have a president of the United States who actually sees them, gets them, and wants to do the hard work that is about improving their life.
Day one, what's your first executive action?
Well, my first priority, which will be probably the package of bills, is about bringing down the cost of living. So it's about housing, it's about childcare, it's about what we need to do to deal with grocery prices. So it's not one, but it's a package that is with one singular purpose, bringing down the cost of living.
We have to go, but you talk about your mother, and what do you think your mother would be telling you in these final days before this election against Donald Trump?
Just go beat him. That's probably what she'd say. Yeah, that's my mother.
Okay. Well, I know she gave you a lot of lessons, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Good to talk with you.
And joining me now from the White House is NBC's Monica Alba. Monica, a great get from our colleague Yamiche Alcindor out on the campaign trail. We'll get a lot. I want to ask you, though, what stuck out to you from that interview? She was asked about everything from Trump's recent comments about protecting women, whether they want to be protected or not, all the way to maybe not so forcefully disavowing the Biden garbage gaffe. What was striking to you in that interview?
Yeah, a couple things there, Allie. I think it is notable that repeatedly when the vice president is asked what she would do on day one, what her first priority would be or her first executive action, as Yamiche just posed to her there, she really likes to talk about a couple of things that she wants to do, or a package of bills, as she just said, that would lower costs for the American people. That has been her priority, but that has been and has meant that she is answering that question a little more generally, though she's been trying to talk about this idea that if Donald Trump were to be elected into office, that he would come to the Oval Office on day one with a, quote, enemies list, which is a line she repeated here, and that she is really trying to focus on this to-do list and trying to argue that she is focused on trying to make Americans' lives better. But when it comes to that question specifically about what Donald Trump said last night about how he would, quote, protect women, whether women, quote, like it or not, that is definitely something that when it happened, the Harris campaign said, we are going to seize on this and amplify this as much as possible. And so the vice president there saying that, and being very specific to note that she believes it's not just Donald Trump's words, like the ones that he said last night, but deeds. That's what the vice president just said to Yamiche in terms of trying to broaden this and trying to make this closing argument, in their view, that this is not just about Donald Trump's rhetoric, but about what he could do if he is back in the White House and back in office when it comes to things like reproductive freedom, when it comes to things like health care. So they're trying to really make that argument today. And then overall, this is really a moment where the battleground states, the polls are in a dead heat. But the vice president says that it's not the polling that's keeping her up at night. She said to Yamiche, it's what Donald Trump could do and the threat, she argues, that he poses. And that's how she frames some of that as well.
Perhaps not surprisingly, I was struck by Yamiche asking about the glass ceiling breaking potential of the Harris ticket and the way that Harris, as she has continuously since she became the nominee, really keeping that at arm's length. I mean, you covered Hillary Clinton. You watched the way that message ultimately fell flat. Is that the thinking behind the Harris campaign on why they are continuing to sort of keep and push aside questions like this?
I agree, Allie. It's a fascinating topic to explore and one we should be talking about, even if Kamala Harris says she doesn't want to be the one to be talking about it all the time, basically. And she told our own Hallie Jackson in their interview recently that she didn't really want to say that there was sexism here at play and that she doesn't feel like she needs to talk about the fact that she is a woman and a woman of color. She says it's evident, people know it, and that she says that even if people decide they want to vote for me for that reason, that that's not why she's necessarily trying to appeal to them specifically just for that reason. So it is something that she hasn't been leaning in on as intensely as certainly others around her have been. But it was notable at the end there that she said that in terms of her mother and her inspiration and her roots, which is what she likes to talk about when she really talks about her identity, she said her mother's words to her, if she were alive today, would be, go beat him. Allie.
Monica, thank you for breaking that down with us. And we'll get a live report on an effort to get out the vote in a city with historically low turnout in all-important battleground Wisconsin. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. It's not just trick-or-treaters knocking on doors today. In battleground Wisconsin, grassroots organizers are working to turn out the vote, especially in Milwaukee, where early voting numbers are lagging behind statewide turnout. In addition to canvassers making their pitch to voters to get to the polls, tomorrow both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will be in Milwaukee, holding dueling rallies with Vice President Harris announcing another star-studded lineup to include rapper Cardi B. Joining me now is Shaq Brewster, who spent the day with some of those door knockers in Milwaukee. My friend, who has been lagging there, and do the door knockers that you've been canvassing with feel like they are successfully reversing this trend?
They do, Allie, and you know, part of the reason why they feel that way, it's because they've been doing this for some time. This group that I've been walking around with, they were started after what we saw in 2016, where in that election here in Milwaukee, there was a drop-off of voters of about 41,000 people, and you know the margin in that election was about 23,000 voters. So they're trying to really engage with people, remind them when their polling location is and when the election is. And I asked, what is that case that you're making for voters who say that they're not engaged or just don't really want to participate this time around? Listen to a little bit of that conversation.
My message to them is, like, no matter if you feel like, however you feel, just get out and use your voice, because you not voting and storing away your voice, and people need to hear you. So you have that right to go vote, so use it and use it wisely.
Have you had conversations with people and convinced them to come out and vote?
Yes. Plenty of people on our team, we share in the office all the time how we flip somebody to go vote and get them to vote even when they said they wasn't going to vote at first.
And this is one of those problems that we saw improve after the 2016 election. But if you look back at the midterms and compare it to the 2018 midterms, you saw another drop off of about 40,000 votes. So it's a warning sign for Democrats in the Harris campaign as we head into this election, Allie.
Well, when you talk about Democrats and the Harris campaign, turnout in Milwaukee has been a big concern for them. What are you hearing from the campaign side, and are they worried about where the numbers are right now?
Yeah, they acknowledge that this is an issue, and you talked about how the turnout so far has been lagging the rest of the state. I think we have a graphic to show you. It's about 6 percentage points of a difference right now, but that's why they're saying they're flooding the zone in these final days ahead of the election. You mentioned Vice President Harris will be here tomorrow. She's going to have some big-name celebrities with her. Former President Bill Clinton is here in Milwaukee today. In the ramp-up to this election, you can expect to see more visits, more people, because they know it's about turnout in this Democratic stronghold. This is the largest city in the state. So if they get their numbers up, they believe that their margins will hold. They just need that raw vote to back up what they've been seeing. And so far they haven't, but there's a lot of time left, still more early voting, and of course Election Day. So they said they're not worried just yet, Allie.
Shaq Brewster pounding the pavement. I hope you can take advantage of it being Halloween and get yourself at least some kind of dessert. I know you're a big fan.
Might do some trick-or-treating.
You got to. Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. And believe it or not, healthcare has been something of a sleeper issue in this campaign, lagging behind inflation, immigration, abortion, and fitness for office as a top issue. But not anymore. At an event for House candidate in Pennsylvania earlier this week, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson promised massive health care changes if Trump wins the election. Take a listen.
We want to take a blowtorch to the regulatory state, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, these agencies have been weaponized against the people, and it's crushing the free market. It's like a boot on the neck of job creators and entrepreneurs and risk takers. And so healthcare is one of the sectors, but we need this across the board, and Trump's going to go big. I mean, he's only going to have one more term, right? Can't run for re-election. And so he's going to be thinking about legacy, and we're going to fix all these things. And,
No Obamacare.
no Obama. Yeah, the ACA is so deeply ingrained. We need massive reform to make this work, and we got a lot of ideas on how to do that.
Despite pushback from the Trump campaign claiming their candidate does not want to end the Affordable Care Act, Trump said this afternoon in New Mexico that replacing Obamacare would be great.
She says they want to end Obamacare and take away your health care. That's a lie. It's a lie. If we come up with something better, that'll be great. And everybody wants that because Obamacare sort of sucks.
Joining me now on set is Reese Gorman, politics reporter for Notice, Kimberly Atkins-Storr, senior opinion writer for the Boston Globe and an NBC News contributor, and Republican strategist Matt Gorman. We got two Gormans at the table and two of us here, so we're ready to go. But Reese, we'll start with those comments from the speaker. You talk with Republican leadership sources often. I mean, are they sweating that? Because that wasn't a public campaign event. Our colleague Sahil Kapoor obtained that footage.
100%. It's definitely something that they're concerned about. I mean, Obamacare and repealing Obamacare, I mean, you saw what happened in 2018 when they tried to do that last time. It's not something very popular, especially these kind of moderate swing district Republicans. That's not what they want to be defending going into the election next Tuesday. And you've also kind of seen like multiple, like he's tried to walk it back where he was saying, I was just saying that was ingrained in our society. And it's kind of ingrained.
The eye roll sort of undercuts that point.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you see like a lot of people, like I know J.D. Vance kind of, I think it was on Meet the Press, where he kind of tapped into the risk pools situation. And then when I asked him about it, he walked back and said, no, we're going to protect pre-existing conditions. So it seems like a lot of people seem to be kind of towing in to kind of reforms of Obamacare. And then when they're questioned back about it, they kind of pull back. They're like, no, we don't want to do that.
I mean, Matt, you've advised Republican candidates on this issue. This is probably not what they want to be talking about, or is there some upside to reviving this?
The Johnson team has pushed back very vigorously on kind of a lot of this, and I think, you know, I've seen some clips online that only take that first part after the no Obamacare. They've been very clear about talking about the fact that did say it was massively ingrained, because, look, they see the risk here a little bit for some moderate members, and especially kind of, again, going back to 2018, where it really was about health care, and I think the more we're talking about health care in this, it does play a little bit of the Democrats' hands. And that's why they were so vociferous on the pushback of this and clarifying what he actually meant.
Which the clarification also might just be they're upset that he said the quiet part out loud because of what Matt said. 2018, this was the salient issue. Do you think that 2024 could be the new 2018 on this?
Well, I don't think it'll be on this because, listen, I'm concerned about our leaders saying one thing privately to people, to donors, to their supporters behind closed doors, and saying something very different publicly. So I take the speaker at his word when he does want to take a blowtorch to the administrative state. That includes HHS, that controls, that administers Obamacare, that ensures that we do have coverage for pre-existing conditions and for preventative care that people need. But as the people on the campaign trail are saying, people are concerned about cost. Healthcare is a massive cost. It can bankrupt people. And Obamacare that's one reason why Obamacare is so popular. People don't want to have to choose between their food and their medication. And I think this is just a terrible issue. But I take the speaker at his word that he does want to blow towards the administrative state.
I actually do think, although healthcare, we don't typically assign to it a gender as an issue, but women are generally the people in a household that control the purse strings. And there has been criticism this week, Reese, again, from Nikki Haley about the way the Trump campaign is sort of broing it up in the way that they talk to voters. They do well with men, but do you hear from Republicans who are concerned about the way that they're doing with women?
I hear that they feel like the outreach to women is definitely lacking. There's definitely some lacking. I mean, you saw kind of Trump's comments today, but I think it was whether they like it or not, I'm going to what was he saying? Protect women, whether they like it or not. And it's like comments like that just kind of rub Republican women the wrong way sometimes, because they're like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, and also he's doing all these podcasts, and they've made a very clear point that they are really trying to reach out to young men and women. I feel like sometimes, and definitely some of the ones I've talked to in Congress, are like, well, they're not doing enough to kind of reach out to suburban women for sure.
And that's where I think when I was talking with Karoline Leavitt earlier from the Trump campaign, was asking her, wouldn't it be beneficial to get Nikki Haley out on the campaign trail? She makes the point they've got others, but I do think Haley cuts a specific profile. Matt, I want to talk to you about an old column that our friend Chuck Todd wrote, where he says it's obvious at this point that Trump Trump will win men by close to double digits, ditto with Harris among women. The question is how well each campaign does with its weaker gender. So do you see the Trump campaign making any tangible outreach to women? And does Nikki Haley kind of have a point?
I think what Chuck boiled down is the essence of this election, really. Like, whatever side does better with their, preferred gender, quote unquote, so to speak, while cutting down the margins on the other side is going to win this election. And I think the Trump campaign made a very calculated choice that it is easier, and with this limited time window and limited funds, to try and extend our margins among men than try and claw back support among women. And I think what you're seeing is the Harris campaign, after a dalliance with Tim Walz with shotguns and on Twitch, thought the same thing on the women's side. So really, what's going to come down to is if it's like the NBC News poll unveiled 2 weeks ago, where we're beating with a higher percentage of men than we are losing women, it's ours. Other way, and it's likely Kamala's.
I also think the interesting thing with the gender dynamic is it's not just monolithic. I mean, among women, you have black women who are so loyal to the Democratic base, then you have white women who actually typically trend conservative. But the other thing I'm fascinated by is the fact that when Biden was on the ballot, he was able to pull away men, specifically white men, from the Trump campaign. It doesn't appear that Harris has the same appeal there. So what are you seeing in how this gender gap might play?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, this argument that Harris has not been speaking directly to men in her message. Reproductive justice, if you were born, that is an issue for you, right? If you want to protect women's fertility, protect their health, protect their lives so that they can have families if they want, they're the ones who are giving birth to all of us. So that is an issue for everyone. That's not a woman's issue. Guarding against bigotry and xenophobia, it should be an issue for all of us. Ensuring that the poor have access to health care and food and can get by and have housing should be an issue for all of us. So I think I would ask the men who were put off by a message that is not appealing directly to them in a broy way to think a little bit about what it means to be America and what is at stake.
And as we have this conversation, we're looking at live pictures of Vice President Kamala Harris in Phoenix, but you were shaking your head when she was talking.
I think that's the issue, right? Like, in due respect, there's Democrats do not have a message that appeals specifically to men without being but women. And I think that is the challenge. And look, we have plenty of messaging challenges among women, as we've talked about before. But I think Democrats need to crystallize an especially economic message and even cultural message to men that doesn't then immediately invoke women right afterwards. They need a specific message to men directly.
I think the other piece of this that we're watching in the closing days is the way that this Biden gaffe, or whether we're taking him out of context or whatever, the Trump campaign is running with it at this point. Does Harris need to do more to distance herself at this point?
I definitely, just from sources I've talked to, especially in Congress, that's kind of where I spend the vast majority of my time.
Me too.
And so, definitely congressional sources I'm talking to are definitely, they think that Harris should have come out more immediately and stronger. Josh Shapiro almost immediately, uncalled for, just kind of went out and condemned this almost immediately. And they were like, why is our nominee not doing this? Because, effectively, Biden was calling, almost half America garbage.
And at the same time, as I said to Karoline Leavitt, J.D. Vance has said that anyone who supports Harris and Democratic policies are something colorful. So,
And so it goes both ways. But I think, too, Democrats are definitely kind of like, this is just not something we need right now, especially we don't need it from someone that's not even running for office. This is just the leader of the party currently, because he's still the president. And they're freaking out because this is just an unforced error.
That's the key question. Does she need to do more?
No. Listen, she's the vice president. She's been running a campaign that's been inclusive to everyone. Every message, every time she opens her mouth, she talks about being a president for everyone, even those who didn't vote for her, even those who don't agree with her on all things, and moving everyone forward. Like you said, you have other people who've already addressed this, including the president themselves. I find it interesting that she is being held accountable for something that someone else said, while Donald Trump is able to skate on all the hateful things that he says on any given day. And so, no, I don't think I think she's doing all the things. She's being a vice president. She's being a campaign, running a campaign that just got ramped up.
Kim, thank you so much. Gorman 1, Gorman 2, thank you. And we're back tomorrow with more Meet the Press Now. But the news continues with Allie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.